Okay, so cool. We're going to get started. We want to welcome all our attendees. It's awesome to have you here. We're going to discuss digital equity, a topic that is close and dear to all our educator hearts, especially in this last year. And with us, we have an esteemed panel from Chandler USD. They've been partners with Learning.com for 3 years. I'm being reminded also, if you have questions throughout this, please put them in the question chat bot or question area so we can respond to them. I'm also going to point you to the handouts. There's a number of handouts, not just Learning.com, but also the full Chandler success story. So with us today, we have Kurt, Kristen, and Sopani. I hope I said that right. I probably butchered it again, but I apologize. And so they have been implementing Easy Tech and digital equity throughout Chandler USD for a few years now. But I believe all three of you took over this leadership role this year, correct? Is that correct?
Actually, it was just two of us. Kristen had already been in this role, and Kurt and I are the new ones this year, the lucky ones.
And that's why she gets the title specialist on her name, right? And specialist. So with that being said, I want you guys to share something so they get to know you a little bit. And we talked about this before. Tell us, starting out with Kurt, the first piece of technology you truly remember and fell in love with.
First piece of technology for me would have to be a record player, turntable. I am a musician. I was a music teacher for 20 years, so I just go back to the old-fashioned, scratchy, drop the needle record player.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Kristen?
My favorite, and probably what set me down the path, was our first home computer that we received in the 80s. It was an Apple IIc, and I didn't do a lot on it. I mean, some basic stuff and learned to keyboard. But, I mean, that was a solid machine, and it was so solid, in fact, that I actually took it to university with me, and it survived 2 more years of college before I finally was like, I have to get another device. It's dead.
Wow. Okay. That's and I realize if you're an attendee and you want to share in questions or chat your favorite first piece of technology, please feel free to do so. But please note, it does date you, because we were joking before about what technology is your favorite. Tells us basically how old you are. Sopani, you're last. Tell us about what piece of technology really inspired you, or really got you interested.
Well, I would have to say it was my Motorola pager, which I was so excited to get in high school because I thought I was the coolest kid on campus when you were able to page someone and come up with all these different numeric codes that would actually spell out words.
Right, what was the word you were trying to always spell out? Hello or something like that?
Yes.
What was your
yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, I loved spelling out hello. There was a few other words that we probably won't go into right now, but yes, hello was one of them.
Well, and I won't ask any more questions about the pager either. So let's, if we could, Kamala, jump to our West Coast team. My name's John. I'm the Regional Partnership Manager for Learning.com. With us today is Kamala Wymore. She's also the Client Success Manager. And handling the questions in the chat is Eric Detman. He is the Inside Sales Manager. With that being said, my personal favorite piece, and I'm going to date, I told you guys the Sony Walkman, which I thought it was the coolest thing ever. You could walk with a cassette. But I have to be honest, before that, and this is really going to date me, it's the Atari. I remember playing Space Invaders for the first time and thinking to myself, oh my goodness, what is this? I've been in the arcade, but that's what I remember first and foremost. So with that being said, we're going to move forward into the presentation. We have a little delay as far as the slides. So let's talk a little bit about our agenda today. As they're figuring out the slides, I'll talk a little bit to you about the agenda a little bit. We're going to get into, here we go. Whoop, there we go. What is digital equity? We're going to answer that question from a couple of perspectives. Again, we're going to encourage you as attendees to chime in on the chat. The partnership panel, which is why we're here, and then, to hear what Chandler has done to create digital equity. and then a Q&A. First of all, let's talk about what digital equity is, okay? And I'm sharing a definition from the Learning.com perspective. I'm not going to read all 5 of these to you, but the 4th one I'd really like you to take a look at. And what I feel sums it up. My background, I was a 3rd grade teacher for 10 years and a 6th grade teacher for 3 years. And this kind of sums up what I always felt is critical in the technology realm, is that we need to identify the right digital tools to create individual success. You'll notice there's a lot of things that define digital equity, but first and foremost, we're trying to find the right resources for our students so they can go on and be successful in the classroom and in society. Next slide, please. So to sum this up, digital literacy is the ability to use information and communicate, right? And ultimately, that's our goal. We're trying to make all students and all citizens find, evaluate, and create and communicate information, and then use their cognitive and technical skills. So with that being said, let's move on to our first question for our panel. And one of the things when the panel's considering that first question is, in the digital space, please move forward one. In the digital space, in the digital ecosystem, okay, we've got a lot of challenges as educators. And what we mean by that is not only, and I'm sure Chandler will share with you, they've taken care of that educational space, but you're going to hear from these guys, you know, how do we create that balance at home? How do we create digital equity when our students aren't with us? How do we create after school? And also developing and setting them up to be successful in the future, not only in school, but in life. So let's go to our first question. When we talk about our first question, clearly, so folks, so you know, these are jumping out of order. When we talk about our first question, part of the solution at Chandler was Easy Tech. And so they'll talk about that a little bit. But when we talk about Easy Tech, we want to let you know that based in that is content and computer fundamentals, keyboarding, online safety and digital citizenship, as well as in other key areas such as word processing, spreadsheets, databases, multimedia, and visual mapping. Moving on towards the final solution, which is in the upper grades, we're hoping to get students that have computational thinking as part of their everyday experience, as well as coding, and in some cases, possibly robotics. So now, I think after announcing it 2 times, the 3rd time, we're ready for that first question for our panel. Nope, we're not. What we're ready to do is tell you about Chandler USD. And you guys can chime in as well. First and foremost, I'd like you to notice that Chandler USD has a very large ELL population with students coming from all different language backgrounds. It's a very large district with 43,000 students. And I think the most important is that they've noticed that they have a lot of students that are transient and have to move in and out during the school year. And so how do they keep them engaged? And when they return, how do they quickly catch them up to speed in the district? So look at that. It's our first question. How about that? All right, panelists, you're up to bat. Whoever'd like to go first. So when we talk about digital equity, how is it a priority in Chandler School District?
Well, for us, it's really hard to tease apart digital equity from equity. I mean, the digital world, it's just our life, it's our environment. And, you know, the cat's out of the bag and we're not going backwards. And so when we imagine what we're doing with our students and what we're preparing them for, there's always going to be technology in that future, you know. So we have the idea that we're trying to prepare our kids for life. So we say we're, you know, a K to life organization. And, you know, technology is a part of that. And it's not the end all be all, but it's definitely a way that students can show what they're learning, also be creative and collaborate with each other in ways that just are not available in a traditional analog setting. So, you know, we knew that this needs to be part of us educating the entire student. It has to be part of our culture as well. And so we are like solidly working towards digital equity, and it's a long journey. And we, appreciate anybody out there that's listening. Like if you have questions for us and you want to reach out, please do, because while you're picking our brain, we are totally picking your brain too. And I think, it's a huge collaborative effort in public education to, work together with each other. So, it's definitely a priority because we are trying to prepare our students. And so, just to kind of give everyone some background about where we were, just 4 short years ago, we were really a device deficient district, and we didn't have a digital literacy curriculum in place. And so we knew if we want to move towards this future of getting our students really ready, K to life, future ready, that we had to provide a foundation, a basis for these students to go on and continue to learn these skills and apply them in everything they're doing in school and in life. So that started off with the elementary round. So even though we're a K-12 district, what we're going to be talking about today is, solidly from the elementary perspective, because that's where we started. So we started out with, developing our scope and sequence, our digital literacy curriculum. The district invested in hiring certified technology teachers at every site at the elementary level, so that we really could say that, yes, we're a big district and we cover 80 square miles, but if my kid is in a kindergarten classroom somewhere north, it's going to be the same experience as a student that's somewhere south. So we knew that we needed to make sure that we had provided that foundation of digital literacy, because that really speaks to everything else, all of the other initiatives that we're trying to do. Like we are, moving into the blended learning space in our junior highs and our high schools. And we're also, trying to promote CTE courses with our kids. And what we found, before we had our K-6 program, is that our kids they weren't ready when they got to junior high and high school for these courses. And it's been a really nice journey with the technology teachers that we hired, because they're very part of this collaborative environment. And every year we're reevaluating our scope and sequence. We're able to push things down when we notice that we've kind of backfilled some of those skills. We have to make decisions about what are we going to elaborate on, like what do we need to actually beef up, because our kids have, they've already got the foundation, so we need to move on to that next level. And so, it's a journey. I do want to say that with that COVID really laid bare digital equity issues, and I'm sure that's the same way with most districts. And Chandler is not a 1-to-1 district. We're probably closer to being a 1-to-3 district, and we didn't have, there wasn't a goal to move towards 1-to-1. So when we went into lockdown, there was a scramble to get devices out to our students. And we had smaller pockets that we had been working on, like, always trying to look at where the needs are. We had developed some partnerships, some grant programs. We worked with T-Mobile to identify students at 2 sites at the elementary level that didn't have access to devices or hotspots. And so we were able to provide those to the kids. And then COVID hit, and then suddenly it was, amplified. So, at first we were scrambling to get devices out, but what it really laid bare was that this digital equity divide goes beyond just access to devices and internet. And we found that there was such a variation in learning conditions at home. And so that was a challenge, because, we had students that they didn't have anybody there to help them with the tech issue, whether it was, they were home by themselves at the time, or they're just, when their parents were home, they were not able to assist them. We also had kids that were, while they were trying to engage in distance learning, they're also taking care of their siblings and trying to help them out. So that was a huge challenge that we did have to overcome. And I think, our plan going forward, knowing that, is that this is a huge group of stakeholders, our families. We need to be bringing them along on our journey of digital equity.
So you're saying, so if I hear you correctly, you're saying this is way past just the district's issues, right? I mean, engaging the parents, and just so you know, we've got people from New Mexico, Arizona on this webinar, Orange County, similar student populations with similar challenges, but you're saying the community and engaging parents at home and everyone that's part of the community in this process is critical, including businesses. I mean, because it seems, I think if we learned one thing, would you agree that we can't create digital equity by ourselves as a school district or as an educator?
Definitely.
You guys agree with that? Okay. Kurt, something, anything like you guys would like to add or chime in on?
Well, I do want to kind of double that where you said it brings everyone together and everyone needs to be part of it. Everyone in the community, businesses, community programs like libraries and community centers are all involved. And I think by reaching out, connecting with businesses like T-Mobile, we have Intel, we have a large Intel presence in our community and we partner with them. So by creating these partnerships, not only are we able to kind of spread that out throughout the district and meet the needs of our students in all the different schools and all the different programs that they're in, but the businesses in the community see that also, and they can see the progress that we're making towards those students and can see that all the way up. And I think it kind of brings everyone together around the common goal. Like Kristen mentioned, we're K to life, K to the career, getting them ready for their future careers. And I think that's a huge part of it. So Christian brought that up, and John, you're exactly right, bringing in the community.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things. I know we've got, it's mainly educators on this call, but if I've seen one thing, it's really making everyone outside of our district, outside of our educational space, right, understand what digital equity actually is. We all know the term, but it's surprising once you get past this space of educators, how we're having to educate businesses and other people, my friends. I mean, so I think you guys are doing a great job, and I encourage everybody else to get past the educational space, and start talking about that. Let's move on to the next question, which is, what do you guys think are the now you kind of tapped on some of this, but what are the essential or key elements to successfully promoting digital equity? You kind of mentioned the Wi-Fi and the challenges with hardware, which I'm sure we all face. From our side at the Learning.com, we are trying to help districts, and they would be challenged, with just Wi-Fi or hardware. That's where we were stuck. I think a lot of 2020 for all of us was in that hardware Wi-Fi space. But Sophie, we're going to lead off with you. What do you think are some of the key elements to successfully promoting digital equity at Chandler, and then of course across other districts?
One of the things I need to kind of point out was that Kristen and Kurt totally hit the nail on the head there in terms of the community and parental involvement. But as an educator and, a member here of Chandler Unified for years, you kind of have to start with what can we control ourselves right now? Because we want to bring in all these community partnerships, but we have to kind of start the change in-house. And I would say one of the major key elements that you have to start with is the buy-in from all the levels within the district. That means we need the buy-in from the teachers, administrators, and even the upper level cabinet members, because that's where you build the culture that this is a priority. Once you've established that key element as a district, yet no ifs, ands, or buts, this is what we want to do, this is where we're going to spotlight all of our attention, then you could actually start promoting and reaching out to the community involvements with, like what Kristen said with T-Mobile. Intel is one of our businesses that we have right here, and they're wonderful and they're very supportive. So I would say the first key element you need is really to create the culture that sets that aspect as a priority. And that's kind of hard to do because you're talking about teachers, administration, then you have governing boards. I mean, you're trying to get buy-in from all of those levels, but if you don't, then a lot of those other initiatives are just going to fall by the wayside somewhere, or it's going to be an afterthought of that was a good idea, but we didn't really execute it well. And I think Chandler did a great job of that by when Kristen mentioned 4 years ago, by saying, we value this so much that we are going to actually have a designated tech teacher at every single elementary site, teaching from the same curriculum. So all students, no matter where they live on the north side of our district or the south side or a title school or what I call an entitled school, it doesn't matter where they are, they're getting the same curriculum from a trained teacher. And we use Learning.com as our kind of method to really convey what we felt as a priority. So
So
I don't know if you guys
let me
want to chime in
interrupt
there.
you for a second. I want to ask you about priority. When you say priority, I hear time during the school day. We're all busy,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So how do you guys, okay, so we've convinced people and everybody nods their head because they know it's good, right, to have technology. But how do you make time a priority in that space as one of the essential elements? So we've got the buy-in, let's say. How do you help the schools and your tech teachers create that time and space? What do you guys do for that?
Well, the structure, I guess you could say from the larger perspective, is you had to start by saying, hey, with the designated teacher, the tech teacher there is a required amount of minutes every week or every so many days that is valued and set aside specifically for the digital literacy education. Now, classroom teachers, because I think all of us right here have been classroom teachers, we know things are passed down to us. Here's another initiative, and here's some more standards, and by the way, you're going to have to do this committee, and it's time, and nothing is ever taken off the teacher's plate. By having a designated tech teacher that said, hey, this is a priority and we're going to designate this specific person to kind of lead the way. Now, because it's pretty much a digital literacy program, you do want that to kind of ripple outside of just the tech teacher, but it has to start somewhere first. And once that is established and the tech teachers kind of really pave the way, then that bleeds into the classroom, and it bleeds into the classroom teacher and the music teacher and the PE teacher, and we want that ripple effect to continue going out. So that's how we kind of have to address time at the beginning, to have a district that says, yes, we are going to require this time, and we're going to set aside people to actually execute and make sure that the time actually happens.
So you're saying ownership. I mean, you guys, so another key element is you've got someone that owns this at the school buildings. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
the only term I can come up with that is accountable, responsible, and then they're also kind of, wrong term maybe, but the cheerleader in getting the enthusiasm and making it, go past the time they have with those classrooms.
Yes, with a district this large, we definitely need a lot of cheerleaders.
Basically saying you three can't cover the entire Chandler school district. Is that an admission? Even though you do? Right. Okay. I'm just checking. I mean, that's part of anything, right? I mean, we talk equity, but it sounds cliche, but it does take a village or a community to do that. And so you've dedicated someone, and is that all they do then? Is that not all they do? I don't mean it that way, but you know what I mean? They're responsible for the tech space in their building from Monday through Friday.
Yes, absolutely. For every student that is enrolled on that campus, that kindergartner that just starts the first day, and that sixth grader that leaves to go on to junior high, every single student. Mm-hmm.
And they're not allowed to disappear into some room and just come out when people need help.
That is correct.
I was going to mention, John, you mentioned like they don't disappear when someone needs help. The tech teacher is kind of like the go-to person on the campus for everyone, for parents and for the community that come in. They go to the tech teacher and say, I have this idea, let's try this, or can you help me with this activity or this event? So it's kind of it kind of branches out all the way out, like Sapani said, all the way out throughout the entire school. And I also wanted to mention one more thing that we're doing as an example in our district is we are actually working on partnering with Apple to get a technology survey out to our teachers to find out exactly how our teachers are using devices in the classroom, find out what students are doing on their devices so that we can kind of target those schools, target those sites, even down to classrooms and teachers, so that we can find out exactly their needs, where those individual needs are, because they're different from class to class, from school to school. There's so many different programs. And I think bringing it back to equity, that's one of the ways we're creating this buy-in, creating this ownership in our district, is by going out and actually finding out what their needs are, what students' needs are, and starting with how they're actually using the technology now to branch into what can we do to improve that and move forward.
Well, I appreciate you guys saying that, because I think that's one thing the misconception is oh, look at this, we've given them hardware, we've given kids Wi-Fi, and there's a platform too. Phew, we're done, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things with equity moving forward, and that's what I like about when you guys talk about being proactive is you need to empower your educators. And whether you're an administrator on this call or just another teacher, you need to, that it thinks you don't have a say with digital equity. I mean, tell people what needs to be done, because the eyes and the ears of the everyday classroom teacher, as well as the tech person, I mean, is critical, one, from developing things that students need, as well as you guys finding out, okay, what are our teachers implementing and creating momentum, and direction. So I appreciate that. So if I hear you guys correctly, it's important to have someone dedicated that owns ownership, find time for it, and then check in with your educators and continue to check in with your educators, not as a watchdog per se, but as an empowerment and getting feedback and knowing where to take the next steps, whether that's professional development or, whatever activity they need. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. One of my favorites, which is, how do we keep our students engaged? So how at Chandler how do you promote student engagement? And I think, and I'm going to harken back to, and what I like about working with Chandler is you don't just let the kids go on there. Teachers are monitoring reports. They're following through with lessons and application. But how do we make sure that they're staying engaged and that we're responsible as educators, not just putting them on devices and then, turning our backs?
So I can kind of continue along with that, and then I'll pass it on to Kristen if she wants to mention anything. But I think it kind of goes back to the same thing that I mentioned before. It goes down to our end users. We're looking at our end users, our parents and our students, to figure out what their needs are and then meet them there, determine what it takes to get them to where they, get them the skills they need to be successful. But also, how do we get them excited about what they're doing? How do we get them into and motivated to gain those skills? So, we're a district of choice. We have a huge range of programs in our district, from like dual language to title schools to traditional academies, gifted programs. Our secondary program has a new cybersecurity academy. So there's all these different, like a variety of programs that our students can choose to be in, given their, where their backgrounds are or their interests. We also, you mentioned engaging our kids outside of school, outside the traditional school schedule. So we do have a robust community education program. It manages our clubs. Some of the clubs that we have are, that are on the digital literacy side are robotics clubs. We have STEM clubs, coding clubs. Last year when I was a tech teacher in my school, we had a digital music club to bring in students that were interested in music and wanted to connect the arts with technology. We also had a drone club, which was a way to connect their digital skills with like real world careers. We had a Girls Who Code club to encourage more young girls to get excited about careers in STEM and to close that gender gap. So all these kind of external programs and opportunities for our kids kind of give those kids with those different backgrounds and those different interests, they kind of get a home where they can kind of explore and express themselves and expand their interests so that they can get excited and engaged in that learning. And then one more thing I'll mention is that over the summer, we try and stay connected with our teachers, stay connected with our families, with communication out, community ed. I mentioned the community programs with our public libraries. And we've even had teachers that have reached out with our programs and said, hey, can we continue this through the summer? Can I keep Google Classroom going through the summer? Because I want to stay engaged with these kids, even though they're outside of school, so they can continue doing these Learning.com lessons and continue doing, doing activities where they're staying connected with their school, and teachers can stay connected with their communities throughout the summer. So, and then anything anyone else wants to add?
I'll just add that with the engagement piece too. I mean, with technology, and we were all technology teachers on this panel as well, that we had kind of instant buy-in because, you know, for the most part, especially my experience at the elementary level is kids, they're motivated by technology. But, you know, with the technology, you really have an opportunity to develop the voice and the choice that your students have to show what they're learning or just to show their interests, and, you know, something that you're not able to do with just pencil and paper. So I think, you know, it's important that we're building that engagement, but we're also building the relationships with our students so that we do understand, you know, that, hey, like, let's give these kids, this is what they need to know. You know, this is what our standards say, and these are what our learning outcomes are. But let's give them some, let's make this even more engaging for them by giving them some choice in how they show, how they demonstrate that learning, or just, you know, avenues of creativity. Like, I just feel like that we beat the creativity out of kids by the time they leave elementary, and you can almost see that change when, you know, they're so bright-eyed and just like, you are just a superstar with kindergartners in the tech lab. Like, they think everything you're doing is magic, and they're like, nothing is beyond them, and they're willing to try so many things. And I just, you know, I want to keep them engaged and not, you know, crush the creativity out of them. And I think we do that with technology because it does offer voice and choice.
Right, and I think that's a good point. That's a great point. I mean, all the points are great, but, you know, that we don't worry about usage, right? I mean, that it becomes this X amount of minutes per X amount of days formula sometimes that can destroy that enthusiasm. And kids learn, you know, different ways and different times. And I think, like, just having the accessibility that you talk about is critical, and offering the different options from a resource standpoint, I think is critical, because we just don't know what's going to catch their interest sometimes. I mean, I've been guilty of that as an educator, and also on the side of, you know, a vendor, just putting kids in front of stuff, right, and not really engaging them and not finding out how they want to learn or the way they want to learn. Fortunately, now we can individualize instruction to the point that we can allow kids to individually express themselves. But at the key part of that, and like what you guys are doing with Easy Tech, is they have to know, they may know some things from an entertainment or general native standpoint, but they have to acquire some of those basic tech skills. And I think one of those that everybody sees is keyboarding. I mean, as we go further and further into this, it's interesting how essential keyboarding's become. But let's move to the next question, which is student engagement. We all know, you know, okay, that's great. We've got kids engaged, but we need our educators, we need our teachers to, one, not make the time and quite honestly, put the solutions and technology resources in front of them. So how do we engage and develop teachers? And I'm going to twofold this on you guys. How do we keep them engaged? All right. You know, let's say there's the initial excitement, and how do you guys keep them engaged throughout the year, your teachers?
I think one of the things that we try really hard to do is to make sure that we are partnering with the other academic coaches that are in our district, because, you know, we are the ones that are, you know, developing the professional development, the curriculum that we're giving to our teachers, the training. So it was, you know, and it's what Sapani was mentioning, that whole, like, it's top down. So everything that we develop as far as PD goes for our teachers, that we look through several lenses. We look through the lens of equity. We're also looking through the lens of, you know, our EL learners. We're looking through the lens of, okay, how do I support these learning outcomes with technology? What are some things that we can do? And so we make sure that we're not, you know, working in a silo, that it's just the ed tech team, you know, doing ed tech stuff, but make sure that we partner with them for their professional development. So that, you know, if they're doing an initiative that, hey, we know how we can support that with iPads in the K2 classroom. So here's some things that you can do. Because if they're getting that message from everybody, then they understand that this is important, that everybody is bought into it, like from the district level, but there's support at every level. The other thing is just making sure that we're meeting them where they are at, and that's something that I think we can always improve on, and Kurt touched on. We're really excited about the Learning Technology Survey. Initially, we're going to be giving that to our K2 teachers, because as we kind of relaunch our Apple initiative, we lost some ground during COVID. We were right in the middle of our coaching cycle, and then we went into lockdown. So it's been a solid year. So we're doing a relaunch of that. But, you know, just using that information to meet them where they're at, and then to develop that targeted instruction for them. So, so that they know that their concerns are validated as well. And technology can be kind of a scary thing for some users. With COVID, I think even our most reluctant teachers, were like, you had to get on board because suddenly you were teaching in a digital, like a distance learning environment. So we want to make sure that we kind of, keep that momentum going forward. And I think, surveying our students or getting this, our teachers, getting this information from them will help us to target instruction for them so that we can develop those support plans. I mean, we have our baseline of PD and what everybody in the district can get. That's that equality piece. But then we can dive deeper into their perceptions and the needs of their students to provide a more tailored experience, and that's that equity piece.
We also try to.
Sophanie, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. So how do you engage that reluctant, that fearful educator? And how do you engage that and reassure to develop them and get them moving?
Well, that's a great question. Kristen kind of touched on.
I know it's different for everybody.
Yes.
So generalize the best you can.
So we try to create what we kind of consider as lateral mentorships. You have coaches that are, let's say, in instructional resource centers or district office. But what I think districts kind of miss the point on is that they have so much talent in their educators out in the classrooms, and the challenge is finding that those teachers that have the passion and the skill and the motivation within the digital world, and actually kind of being additional cheerleaders like we mentioned it earlier. So once you identify those teachers that have the same passion and knowledge bank, then creating the lateral mentorship is easier and it's more seamless. I mean, when you're talking about maybe a team of 7 with 40 some schools, you have to create those I guess you could say the train the trainer and also the cheerleader models on campuses that help spread. So let's say you have the reluctant teacher out of college. She's fresh out of college. She's like, great, I'm tech savvy. I'm so good with like social media. But then there's the concept of, okay, that's personal. How do we move that into an educational setting where we're now going to teach students, let's say, digital literacy with their proper citizenship online, data privacy, security measures that you want to kind of keep in place, and a lot of these preteens really need to learn about before they kind of essentially go out into the wolves right there, and you don't want to throw them there. So it's kind of tough. But what I feel is if you create those lateral mentorships, it's easier to get, hey, let's try this. Oh, okay. All right. I see how that worked with you. It's immediate. You see the satisfaction immediately in that, hey, that worked with the students. It worked with, let's say engaging them, and it saved me some time on my grading. That's amazing. So just little small moments like that will kind of capture them, and eventually you've kind of created another leader on campus.
Right. And I think one of the things, right, we all love return on investment. Give me a reason to do it. Okay. We know we're not going to get paid anymore. We know we're not in as much as we'd love to do it out of the goodness of our hearts, but give me a reason why. And I think that's a great example of, I've just saved you some time. I've made this easier, and it's not that hard. I think one of the things is that, like we've all learned in different phases of our life, right? Just someone there, being there, when we all learned how to ride a bicycle, maybe, okay? They weren't even touching the bicycle, and you think you're getting help. It's just knowing someone's there if you fall, or you slip a little. And I think that's a lot of technology. I appreciate that. Kurt, anything you want to add? Can't hear you.
I think we might have lost Kurt.
Kurt? All right. That's okay. Let's move to the next question. And kind of summing this up, I want to remind you that in our control panel, there are handouts. We'll also email you the Chandler success story, but that final question of share a success story. So what's a success story? And it doesn't have to be this grand thing. I'll just share from my point. I'll give you an example, and please share a success story digitally if you're an attendee in the chat. I favorite, and I miss it all the time, and I think about it, and I still love it, is the first time you see a kid read and the light goes on, right? And they realize they just read, which I still think is the coolest thing in the world. So that's always going to be my favorite success story. But share something simple from a tech standpoint with you guys, and it can be a kid, student, parent, whatever it is. Share just a little success story with us, each of you.
Well, I'll start with, this was just last year, so let's say pre-COVID. We're going to use that as our benchmark now with timelines. We had a first grader, and the elementary school that I was a tech teacher had a very diverse EL population. We have some students that, let's say, are monolingual in Spanish, but we also had a pocket of students that were monolingual in Russian, in Mandarin, in Japanese, just because of kind of the location of where that site is. And I would hear from the classroom teacher that this, particular first grade student did not really engage in class and didn't speak in, even though, you had labels everywhere, you're trying to use picture card cues. And I just found that really odd, because I didn't see any issues in my classroom. Then I would ask with the PE teacher and music, hey, are you seeing any of these similar things? And they agreed with the classroom teacher. So that kind of made me really look back into, like, how is it that this student is being very successful in my class versus PE, music, or the general ed classroom? And it came down to, and I watched her, is when she came in and we give the instruction in terms of what we're learning for the day. Let's say we're talking about, minimizing and maximizing, windows on your computer. It was such a visual aspect for her. She could actually take on the lessons and understand the lessons, even if it was in English, because of how visual it was. I don't know if, those are viewing have seen the lessons within Easy Tech, but it always shows what to do with the cursor or with the keyboard before the students have to do it independently. And that was enough for her to see the video and see what she was supposed to do and carry that over and be successful moving forward. Because it was like that, she was able to actually outpace and outlearn the English-speaking students. So it was a very safe and comfortable environment. She didn't feel like she was being judged or being compared to the other students, and she thrived in it. And that's what I love about it, is because how visual it makes it kind of takes the language out. And it's wonderful for those students.
Right, and it's one of our biggest challenges as educators, right? Whether that's California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, we've got students coming from all different levels, language, ability, and that privacy of the digital space sometimes and technology is all they need to flourish. So great example. Okay, Kurt, I think you're back with us. I apologize for that mute. It wasn't anything you said. What's your digital success story?
Oh, I was just going to say that just being able to find ways to find an activity or a lesson or some type of just thing that works for that student. You've got all these students in a class, and I can do a whole lesson and have a lesson ready and have an activity ready for them. But there's always like 4 or 5 students that need something different, or the whole class needs something different. And there's all those individuals, and by finding platforms out there that have the variety, that have the ability to enhance different parts of the lesson and give kids what they need where they're at, and allow them to go forward in the lesson, allow them to go back and try something different. I think that's where I've kind of really enjoyed working with the kids in the technology classroom, especially last year. I just really had those moments where a kid would come up and say, hey, can I try this? Can I go somewhere and do this extra thing? And by using platforms that allow that extra exploration, it really made it an enjoyable experience for the student, to where they're motivated and engaged to continue learning. And it also helped them further their skills, and the other kids saw that and were able to jump in with that. So I mean, it's not a specific, one example, but there were times when that happened, and I think that was the most meaningful of those educational experiences.
Well, I appreciate hearing the individual thing. That's what I hear from you guys all the time, is the individual kid. Not that we have 43,000 students, which is awesome, number one. And number two, which you both hinted at and said, and I know Kristen feels it's the same way, as that, how do we take kids from prompting and all that to intrinsic motivation, where they're just coming up? So what I hear there is high intrinsic motivation. Awesome. Kristen, individual success story, please.
Well, I think what I think about the most, and this is not even necessarily related to working with students, but a big success that we had was the collaborative nature of all of our network administrators and our techs, our site techs, which are the people that go out and actually work with the hardware and the software, and our ed tech team, and developing a war room, a support that we had in place during distance learning. And why I think it was a success is because this is, I think, for some of our site techs and for some of our network administrators, this was really the opportunity for them to see who their end user was. And it was a whole group effort. So basically we were help desk. And so we were fielding calls, from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, from teachers, from students, from parents. And it was fun to listen. I mean, my favorite, one of our network administrators had such an easy, natural rapport with the kids. I loved listening to him, talk through a problem with a little 5-year-old on the phone. And I think it gave everybody in that room had an appreciation for who our learners were and what we needed to do to keep moving them forward. So, when you are flipping those switches, you have an idea of how does that affect the 5-year-old user on campus when I'm making the login credentials this way. So I think that was a success because we came together, group effort, all of these stakeholders, and I think a lot of people kind of got a sense of, all right, this is what we're here for, this is what it's about, and it developed really nice partnerships that they were there, but not quite as tight as it was after going through that experience.
So you guys kind of achieved, right, all the way back to what Sophie had said, which is, the buy-in, making it a priority. It took an experience like that, if I hear you correctly, and the right spirit. I think it's really cool that the right spirit's there, and, that it led to teamwork and momentum. So, I mean, that's it. Yeah, it's awesome to hear the kid, right? It's such a chicken and egg type thing, like student engagement, teacher development, success, which one comes first, right? And it's all kind of all the same at the same time. And it sounds like you guys have kind of gotten or found the secret sauce and embraced. I think the one thing I noticed from all of you was you just embrace challenges. And having worked with Chandler before, with your Title I offices, I can't say how awesome it is that at Learning.com we get to work with you, because you guys just embrace challenges. So at this point, with this awesomeness in front of us, our attendees, you have access. So I'm going to ask anybody that has a question. Of course, it's not limited to this space by any means. You can reach out to us. These guys are great. They go way past Chandler. I think I can't say enough how we handpick them as advocates for children and in the digital skills space. So if you have a question, now's the time to ask our panelists. And while we're waiting for those questions, I'm going to encourage you to take action. My former educator always comes out in me, believe it or not. And I believe that we have to continue to push past our school district. So does Learning.com, and advocate. That means if you're on Facebook, tell people about what you're doing in your classroom from a digital equity perspective. Talk about your district. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're not, get on LinkedIn as an educator. I strongly recommend it. You can find great business partners that are looking for relationships. But advocate with us. We post, we tweet daily. You can follow us, you can work with us, but advocate. When we come out to present at Q or California Association of Administrators or Arizona Principals or the New Mexico Tech Conference, come say hello and find out how you can be an advocate. Second, experience a demo. We've talked to you about Easy Tech and all the different content that's in there, but if you'd like to experience a demo, it's super easy. You can either do it live with us or I can set up a demo account with you. And finally, consult and create. It goes past Learning.com. If you're really thinking of setting up something for your students to create digital equity, you can talk to us, we can consult, and we can also bring educators to that call, like you see here with Chandler today, and kind of answer your questions. It's not that hard to get started when it comes to digital equity, and it's truly an essential tool as we move forward. It has got to be, to say it's a civil right, I don't think is strong enough even. It truly has become something that all our kids for the future are going to need. And no matter what their challenges are, this is something we can provide to all our students. I'm happy from the West team to respond to any questions, and we want to thank you for your time. Again, within the next week, you'll be receiving the recording of this. Please feel free, if you do not hear from us, to reach out.